The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, weekdays 4 Eastern.
Your Majesty, thanks very much for joining us. Welcome to Washington.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have a lot going on, but education, especially educating young girls in Jordan, in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, that's your passion right now. You have a huge challenge ahead of you.
Absolutely. I think education, global education, should be a priority for all of us. You know, when we think of the Millennium Development Goals, I think the one key to unlocking a lot of the challenges that we face in the world is through education. And the sad fact of the matter is that we have 75 million children out of school today. It's actually an investment that we should really focus on, even in economic downturn, because it's an investment that doesn't devalue. It pays dividends many times over, and it's actually quite an inexpensive investment. It will cost us only $11 billion annually to put every child in school in the low-income countries. Now, when you think of the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been mobilized in order to help the banking system, $11 billion is something that we can afford.
And in the Muslim world, in the Arab world, there seems to be so much discrimination, though. And correct me if I'm wrong, against little girls getting the same level of education that little boys get.
Well, in the Arab world, there have been good investments made in terms of increasing general enrollment and in trying to achieve gender parity. But the fact remains that we have 6 million children who are out of school in the Arab world. Two-thirds of them are girls. But I think the real challenge is now to really focus on the quality of the education. So although we've managed to put more children to schools, we haven't managed to give them the skills that they need when they get out of school. And there hasn't been the link between the education system and the private sector, which means that 1 in 4 of our young people is actually unemployed.
I know in Jordan you're doing the best you can, but elsewhere in the Arab world, certainly in parts of the Muslim world, there is this discrimination against girls. Girls can't even go to school, for example, in Afghanistan under Taliban-controlled areas. How big of a problem is this? Because we hear these reports, and to those of us in the West, it's a source of great outrage.
Well, Afghanistan is an extreme case, and when you look across the Arab world, the situation differs in each country. But for the most part, now in the Arab world, there is an understanding that education for girls should be a top priority, and I think mindsets are changing in that regard. That said, we still do have some discrimination, which we have to overcome.
Because we heard a highly publicized case the other day in Saudi Arabia of a 47-year-old man marrying an 8-year-old girl, and apparently this was very legal.
Well, it should not be legal, and it certainly wouldn't be legal in Jordan. But as I said, mindsets have to be changed. What we confront when it comes to gender parity are the obstacles are very much in terms of the traditions, the mindsets, and cultural attitudes. And those, unfortunately, take a long time to change. They need patience and persistence and a long time to working along that path. But hopefully we are getting there. And as I said, it's not only just focusing on gender parity, as important as that is, but it's also focused on the kind of education that we do give our young people. In the Arab world, we still focus too much on rote learning, on memorization, not so much on, we teach children what to think rather than how to think.
Because we've heard so much over the years, especially here in the United States since 9/11, about the madrasas, these religious schools where these young boys are taught, according to what we heard in the 9/11 Commission testimony and all of that, basically to hate the West. How big of a problem in the education system are these madrasas in the Arab and Muslim world?
As I said, you cannot generalize about the Arab world as a whole, because the situation differs in many different countries. So, for example, in Jordan, I have a program called Madrasati, and I don't want madrasas to always be associated with something negative, because Madrasati, actually, the translation is my school. And in that program, what we've done is we've done a needs assessment of the 500 worst schools in Jordan, and we looked at everything that they need, and then we tried to partner with people in the private sector, in government, in NGOs, and the community, try to help fix those schools and to really revamp them. And as a result, we've had a change in mentality where the responsibility for education shifted from just being a public responsibility to being everyone's
Have you gone through the textbooks? Because the textbooks supposedly are a source of a lot of this hatred, where they teach young kids to hate the West, certainly to hate Israel.
I'm a strong believer that in education, education should be agenda-free, certainly free from any political agendas or religious agendas, because every child should be given the ability to learn how to think and not what to think. They should be able to be given the tools of how to explore the rest of the world, how to surf the internet, how to acquire knowledge, and then they can make their own judgments about the rest of the world. And there's nothing worse that anyone can do than to feed stereotypes and prejudice in young people's minds and to try to shape the way they think and they view the world. Because I think at the end of the day, when we grow up, we have to have the right tools to make our own judgments and our own decisions. And if that happens, then that's something we should fight anywhere, whether it's in the Arab world, but you see that happening everywhere, whether in the West, in some cases here in the United States, all over the world, you have people trying to pass on their own prejudice and stereotype onto the younger generation. And that, for me, is a terrible thing that's almost equivalent to abuse of children.